The topic today we are going to discuss is agreement of the verb with the subject. Now, we cannot say they is sitting, the girls is drawing, are. So, the verb must agree. If there is one child, the child are drawing. Can you say that? No. The children are drawing. The child are playing. No. The child is playing. They is coming. No. They are coming. Whenever the subject, the number of persons, you have to check, then the verb changes. When there is a singular person, then it will be, when you say she or Mary, then it will be a singular verb. The verb changes according to the number of people. So we are going to discuss, we are going to do exercise on agreement of the verb with the subject. It's a very interesting topic. Always a verb must agree with the subject in number and person. So in the written work, when you start writing, automatically you will know what's the problem. Okay? When you talk correctly, automatically you will write correctly. So the title is agreement of the verb with the subject. Agree. Agreement of the verb with the subject. With the subject. The verb must agree. Whatever the writing we may do, the verb and the subject, the most important, the verb and the subject. Must agree. The verb and the subject. They are playing. They are coming. We are going. So when you look at the subject, when you look at the subject and the verb, you have to see that they agree. Now, there are three persons we know. The first, second, and the third. Now, when I read, okay, I read. We read. And I say, I talk. If there are more than one person, then we say, we talk. Now, for second person, we say, you talk. And in plural, you will say, again, you talk. You don't change. In the third person, supposing we say, she talks. She, singular. The verb has you have to add it. She talks or he talks. When you talk about the plural form, then you say, they talk. When you say, he talks, they talk. But the second person, you talk, or again you will say you talk only. So we look at that first. A verb must agree with the subject in number and person. And that's what we are going to do. A verb must agree. A verb must agree with its subject, with its subject. With its subject in number and person. Subject in number. Must know the number of people and person. Number of things and person. Now let us look at this very carefully. we are looking at the verb agreement. The verb must agree with the subject in number and persons. We have to look at that very, very carefully. Okay. Now, we have examples of first, second, and third person. Okay, let's look at some examples. When you talk about examples, you have the first person. First person. Then you have the second person. And then you have the third person. So we are looking at the first person, second person, and the third person. Okay, now we are looking at the examples. What are the examples we have here in first, second, and third person? Now we have singular and plural. Okay, first person, singular. You have first person, plural. Now we're going to look at the verbs, how it changes. First person singular, first person plural. Wow. Now, when you say, I talk, in the first person you will say, in the singular you will say, I talk. But then we have more than one person. Then we say, we talk. The number and the verb agrees, okay? I talk, we talk. In the second person, you will say, you talk. You. You say you talk, and when it comes to plural, in the second person, you will again say you talk. For the number, you only, you talk. But in the third person, you have, supposing you say he or she, we will say he or she. Here there is a change, and that's what we have to look at. Talks. Look at the change. He talks or she talks. That S comes there. Look at the verb change here. And then in the third person, you say the number here is they. There are more than one or two persons. So you will say here it is more than, the number is more. So you say they talk. Now this is what we have to be careful about. The verb must agree with the subject in number and persons. Okay? So in the first person you have I talk. In writing, any matter in writing, got to be careful. Then we say in plural, we say we talk. In the second person, we'll say you talk, but the same thing, the third person plural, you will say you talk. In the third person, whether it is he or she, we say he talks or she talks. Here the verb changes there, the plural. The verb is plural, and here the number, the person, singular. Now, when you talk about the plural form for more than one number, then you will say they talk. She talks, the verb change, they talk. This we have to remember. So here we get making the subject, she agree with the verb talk. Here you have to add an S. When it's a singular, one person, then it is plural. Here, more than one person, but then the verb remains the same. Okay. A singular subject must have a verb in singular form. A singular subject must have a verb in singular form. That's very something that we need to remember. What is it? A singular subject, a singular subject What about the singular subject? The singular subject must have a verb. It must have a verb. In singular form. In the singular form. Singular form. This we must remember. Okay. We're talking about the singular subject must have a verb in the singular form. Okay. What about a plural subject? The next one we need to look at is a plural subject. What about the plural subject? In the plural subject, it must have a verb. A plural subject must have a verb in the plural form. Must have a verb. Must have a verb in the plural form. Okay. The plural subject must have a verb in the plural form. That's what we are going to look at. But then there is also sometimes there are changes. Now I have some rules down here to help us to decide whether the subject is singular or plural. They show how the verb agrees with the subject. So we are going to have some of the rules we are going to discuss, which will help us to decide whether subject is singular or plural. So we have to look at whether the subject is singular or plural. We are going to look at that. And how the verb agrees with the subject. Here, singular, and we say the singular form is talk, plural form for when the number, there is a change. Okay. In the first form of rule we have when two or more singular subjects joined by and a verb is in the plural. Okay. Now, when I say Tom and Jerry, then Tom and Jerry, there are two singular nouns, but then it is joined by and. Okay. So it becomes a singular subject and it is joined Tom and Jerry. Then the verb becomes plural. Tom and Jerry are happy.